I'm going to first start with introducing myself. My name is Arpita. I'm a holistic therapist and a wellness, corporate wellness facilitator at Illuminations, JLT. I practice few modalities, family constellations being one of them. Apart from family constellations, I am a clinical hypnotherapist. I'm also a teacher of clinical hypnotherapist. I teach batches who join the ECA curriculum. I have also specialized in regression therapy. So I do practice transpersonal regression therapy as well. So in a nutshell, I work with people all around the world, helping them overcome their patterns, their blocks that lie in their subconscious mind. Having said that, family constellation facilitation is a completely different kind of work. The modality is also completely different, which I'm going to be explaining to you today, and we'll take it on from there. I've been in Dubai for more than 13 years now. I live with my family, my husband, my twins here. When I am not working with my clients, then most of the time I'm at home. And when we are able to travel, I am a solo traveler. So that's something I've missed over the last 1 year, but I should be going back to that. I love reading and I love pets. So that's about me. Coming back to our topic of the day today. It's got a lot of big words, so I'm going to break that down to explain what you can expect out of the webinar today. We are going to be looking at what we call as entanglements. You can call it as blocks, you can call it as repetitive patterns. It could come in form of a mental issue, a physical issue, an emotional issue, or even spiritual issues. So we look at the whole system, whole gamut of experiences that we have as individuals, as human beings. And sometimes when we get stuck, when we get entangled, when we face these blocks, which we all do in our own ways, today we are not going to talk about it and the solution around it from the perspective of mind science. So this is not from the perspective of hypnotherapy, of NLP, of any other modality. We're going to talk about one very, very unique healing modality. Why we say systemic constellations is because we are just not going to look at that trauma, that event, that pattern that I'm carrying for myself as my own problem. Many times, knowingly, unknowingly, we take this, we kind of imbibe these blocks, these patterns from our line, from our ancestors, from the families that we belong to, from the systems particularly. So family is also a system, but it could be other systems as well. It could be the community that we belong to. It could be the country that we belong to. It could be the religion that I belong to. It could be my faith. It could be more or less any system that we belong to. And today we're going to look at how we understand transgenerational trauma, something that is coming down the lines through many generations, what we call as entanglements, and how family constellations or systemic constellations is a way to break free of that. Yes, that's what I had in mind, explaining the understanding and sharing the understanding of transgenerational entanglements. It may be a very new modality to many of you. So we will go into understanding what is family constellations, what is systemic constellations, how does it work, then how is it now different from the other therapeutic initiatives that we take. How would you know that if this is something that you would want to experience for yourself? And I will try and give as many examples from my workshops as possible to make it easier for you to understand. And I'm open for all questions that you may have, any doubts that you may have after that. I'm just going to quickly check the chat box. Oh, nothing there is it. Okay, so let's look at, let's simplify the term entanglements. In very simple words, what we are talking about entanglements, this is a phrase from family constellations or systemic constellations. In reality, what we are talking about is any kind of block, any kind of pattern that you can identify for yourself or in the system that you exist. Now, these pictures just show us a few examples. You can think of your own experiences and have in mind your questions around your blocks and patterns, and we will come to that. The most common blocks patterns that I come across as a family constellation facilitator are, say, for example, relationship blocks. So sometimes people find it difficult to attract the right partners. Sometimes the relationships in the families are a little cold. People don't talk to each other, or there is some kind of distance. It could be relationships which patterns, in fact, which could entail sense of abandonment, sense of being left alone. So anything to do with relationships is one of the major blocks patterns that we see, that we emerge a lot. Similarly, the blocks and patterns could also be in your work life. So things like I'm not able to earn money could be one example, or I earn money but I'm never able to save money, or I earn good amount of money and I can save money, but the problem is I have a block towards success, which means I'm not being recognized, I don't get that promotion, or I'm like kind of invisible at work. Then moving on from there, it could be even physical issues. It could be a repetitive disease that runs in the family. It could be psychosomatic diseases that have no background to it. Like you go to the doctor and the doctor does all the tests and say, there is nothing that we can, there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe it is stress, maybe it's a lifestyle thing, so on and so forth. So yeah, money, success, career, physical ailments, relationships issues, these are what we are talking as the blocks and patterns today. Now, again, just few examples. This is not an exhaustive list. This is truly from my experience as a facilitator of systemic constellations, as well as a therapist. It could be, as I mentioned, painful family situations that you're struggling with, difficulty to attract money, can't get ahead in career, or I can, maybe I attract good relationships, but the harmony is broken as soon as we, kind of get together. Another pattern here, very interesting, is, I can get it. I get things done. Success comes to me. But when I am at the pinnacle of that success, I have a pattern, or my family or my system has a pattern of losing everything. Very common, keep attracting the same kind of partners in my life. I feel I'm blocked from abundance from all sides. And again, very common, very difficult to find and maintain and grow in love. So if these are our common things that as human beings we struggle with, let's get straight into understanding what is family constellations, what is systemic constellations, even before we go into talking about, how, if that is something for you and how you fit into it. Now, when I talk of family constellations or systemic constellations, it is a very unique modality. It doesn't have similarity to most of the practicing modalities that we have around us at the time. One major point that makes it stand out vis-a-vis other modalities is this is a very solution-focused modality. So in many other modalities, we start with a problem. We start with, this is what the issue is, and the whole resolution, the way we go forward is through is backing up on the problem and then going to the solution. This modality, it is just a space where the resolution is kind of there. We just tap into it. We tap into it to see where are the blocks, where are the entanglements, and the entire focus, as we say, it is solution focused rather than being problem focused. It doesn't only look at one person in itself as the entire system. Here, the focus is multi-generational impact of what we call as trauma. This could be memories, this could be any kind of incidents, it could be any kind of inclusions, it could be experiences that we has had, or we didn't have it, but probably somebody else in my system. Somebody else could be my parents, could be my grandparents, could be my ancestors, could be the people of where I belong, my community, my religion, my faith, my nationality, any of that, any system that we belong from. Now, what makes it again very unique is this modality does not require the presence of your mind. Unlike the mind science modalities where we are working, where we are digging, where we are rewiring the files, say from our subconscious mind, here the presence of that conscious mind, subconscious mind, that concept is not required. So many a times constellation can also be done without a person's physical presence in the room. So this is a modality when it is worked on one-on-one. It can also work online. It can also work on-site one-on-one. And this can also be worked very beautifully, and I'll explain that when we do it in a workshop. What else makes it very unique is this is a very new modality. Unlike the branches of psychoanalysis and psychology and even hypnotherapy and NLP, for example, these have existed for many, many years. Family constellation, systemic constellation has only come to the forefront probably 1970s, 1980s and going forward. So in a sense, it is a very, very newly developed technique and modality that has come into our lives. Family constellations, systemic constellations, we use the terms interchangeably, was developed by a German psychotherapist. His name is Bert Hellinger. Though Bert Hellinger never kind of claimed that he is the one who has coined the term family constellations, but he is known to be the father of this modality. Bert Hellinger, born, brought up in Germany, but he spent quite a lot of time of his life in South Africa. He was ordained as a priest. He worked as a school teacher, a headmaster. And during that time, he worked a lot with families. He worked a lot with the systems that we belong to. He was also very much introduced to the Zulu tribe, and many tenets of the Zulu way of life, we can see glimpses of that in this modality as well. From Bert Hellinger, moving on to the next point. Now, let's define what we are talking about here. We are talking about systems. So what is a system? A system is the energy field that is connecting the members and it is holding us together. Say, for example, right now, for all of you who are joining me on this webinar, we are on a platform. We are here for an hour and we form a system. After the webinar is over, of course, we disperse and we go back and we start to belong to the other systems, to our families, to our office colleagues, to our friends. So just in a very simple way, we are constantly parts of not one, but many, many systems. That if you go with that notion of the energy field that connects and holds members together, now constellation, where does this come from? Like when we say the word constellation, the first thing we think of is stars in the sky. If you think of the constellations in the universe, they are also formations. And there are certain stars, there are certain planets that are part of a constellation, which are not part of the other. And there is an energy field, even in the space outside, that holds them together. So whether it is constellation of that magnitude in the universe or the constellation of the small family, we are just, what we're trying to say here, that we don't exist in just as a person. There are so many dynamics, there are so many forces, there are energy fields that keep us connected. So what could be these systems? Systems could be our families, systems could be our communities where we grow up, where we live. It could be our country of origin. It could be the country, like for example, in our case, when we live in a different country, it is your organizations where you work, it is your friend circle. So wherever you are part of a group, you are automatically part of a system. So Bert Hellinger started, this entire line was created through his eyes, through his observation of certain principles that work when there is a system, there is a group. And if these systems, if these principles are followed by the group members, the group, the system, and the individual remains in harmony, which means, in other words, there is no blockages, there are no patterns, there are no entanglements that we can have with people in any of these systems. This is very closely related to the term phenomenology. This is the basis of this modality, which in very simple word, it means that here there is no projection, there is no trial and error. What we do in this line of work is we are recognizing the essential elements that are existing in these systems. Now, when we are looking at these elements in the system, we have three things. We look at them without any fear. So we do not kind of hide anything. Two, we look at them without any intention. When I say without any intention, I mean there is not an inclination to solve something, because many things in life we realize are not for solving. Many things in life are there for us to understand, and that understanding in itself is the solution, is the solving part. And the third element is perception. We do not put any perception of a facilitator into that field, perception of the client's mind, nothing. We clear fear, we clear perception, we clear even intention. And with that premise, we go and we look into what we call as the unfolding of the matrix, where we understand where the problem lies and how the resolution can come up. I will give you examples, but I will first take you through very shortly, very briefly, understanding of what are the three major principles on which this modality works, and how do we understand that there is an entanglement or there is a block that is coming from a bigger system that I belong to, and it is just not me who is playing a part. There could be me playing a part unconsciously in taking on myself many things like these blocks, these patterns, which of course then go ahead and inhibit me in my life path. So according to Bert Hellinger, there are three major principles which, if we are aware of, if we adhere to, can make our lives very simple, which means no entanglements, no blocks, no issues whatsoever. Now, principle number one is, it says that we all of us have a need to belong. Belong means belonging to the family, belonging to the system, belonging to the organization, etc. Now, the fact that we are born is the proof that we already belong to at least one system, which is our family. So there is nobody who can say that I don't belong to a system. Now, whether consciously and the subjective experience of me and my family is good or bad is a different issue. So I may have wonderful relationship with my family members, with my parents, and I say, yeah, of course I belong to the family. That is as good as somebody who doesn't have that good a relationship with their families, and they may not be talking to each other, they may be completely excluded and separated, yet they belong, because life has flown to us from that family lineage, from our ancestral line. Important to note that need to belong and the fact that we belong to one system or the other, even when, and other members also belong equally into that system, is not just about people who stay together. It is not about people who are still alive. So for example, miscarriages, abortion, stillborn babies, somebody who has died very early on in life, members of our families, our ancestors who are no longer alive, etc. If there's been a murder in the family, if there's been a suicide in the family, all of these members of the family who are no longer with us, and maybe out of the pain of remembering that, we have kind of sidetracked that family member, or say we don't talk about that missing child in the family, we don't talk about the death of a parent because it's very painful, we don't talk about the excluded member of a family, say a person who got into drug addiction and then died. It's a disgrace to the family, for example, is only from a very conscious point of view. Unconsciously, all of these people, including us, we belong to the family. So that is rule number 1, which means no exclusions. When we look at this modality, we look at the system with people who are alive or dead or excluded equally. There is no differentiation. Related to this principle comes the second principle, is when we say there is the need for order. Order here means hierarchy, pure chronological hierarchy, which means my grandfathers come first. So my grandparents come higher up in the family tree. From them, my parents have come, and from my parents, I come. And from me, the next generation comes. Order means chronological hierarchy is maintained. Life flows through us in this direction. Love flows through us again from this direction. When a family is in order, when a system is in order, now if I move away from family, let's talk about this from an organization's perspective, it is one and the same. Chronological order, not order in terms of hierarchy in the sense of designations. Here, this is all derived through time. So people who have come before us are higher than us in that hierarchy, in that chain, and people who come after us are obviously junior to us. Now, do not confuse this with the designations or the posts we hold. We are here in terms of systemic constellations. We purely look at who came first. And then the third and the last principle is the need for balance, which means when I belong to a team, when I belong to a system, there is an element of contribution, right? That is the reason we have decided consciously or unconsciously to be in this system. Contribution is what? Contribution is I give you a little, so I bring something into the system, and then you as another member of the system gives a little more. When I receive a little more, then the next time I give it a little more too. And then the contribution from the other side also comes and gives me a little more. This is the positive buildup of contribution. Now, if you even look at it from your work perspective, teams that do this grow, and they grow faster. Families that bring in, like for example, husband loves wife, and then wife loves the husband a little more, and then husband feels very good about it and adds a little more. So when we add on to each other's contribution, not in the other way around, that you didn't do this for me and I'm going to lower my level of contribution, that's the negative spiral. If these three principles are adhered in any group, it's a free flow. It's a free flow of resources, it's a free flow of life, you can say, and no blocks whatsoever. That's when we say that the system is in equilibrium and the individuals are free. They are free to choose the kind of life they want. They're free to choose the kind of relationships they want, etc. A very different way of looking at it is, let me give you an example. Say there's a huge chandelier. So the chandelier is hanging from the ceiling. Now, what's there in the chandelier? In the chandelier, there are levels. So that's like your number 2 principle, which is the order. So you cannot change the proportion of the upper layer compared to the lower layer, because it's going to create an imbalance. The need to belong, similarly, the chandelier will have the places for the light bulbs or the candles to be put in. Now, If one or two of those bulb holders or the candles are missing, which means we have excluded somebody from our system out of probably our own pain, the chandelier will tilt. So the balance will come in when all these three elements are in place, and the chandelier can then be in its best situation to be a lighted and a beautiful chandelier. If this is broken, this is when we have entanglements. What does it mean in terms of a family? It means that in case any or one or more of these principles are not in balance, which means, say, for example, somebody from the hierarchy is missing. Say there's an aborted child or a miscarried child who is not remembered. And when I say not remembered, this is not a place of value judgment or a moral lecture of what is right and wrong. Not at all. It is sometimes out of our own pain. We don't talk about it. We don't say that, say for there's a family of 4 people, this mother, father, 2 children, and imagine the third child has been a miscarried child. So the child is not born. Of course, out of pain, nobody talks about it. But that not talking about it or not remembering the child becomes an exclusion. How do entanglements happen? When there are those missing people in our families, for example, there's an imbalance, there's an unconscious imbalance. Now, the next generation of our families most likely will pick up that spot of that child, in the sense unconsciously, will try to bring the presence of whoever is missing from the system back into the system. So let me give you a few examples to explain entanglements. I had one client in the workshop, and this lady, she came and she said, I am facing all sorts of blocks, like blocks to life, I can say, totally. Like money is becoming a problem. I've lost my job. I've broken up with my partner, etc., etc. So when we did the constellation, when we brought it up on the matrix, what it showed for this lady is she had a missing twin, which of course is not known to anyone, because 1 in 3 pregnancies sometimes start with multiple embryos and they don't make it. Naturally, in the case of my client here, nobody in the family even knew about it, that there was a missing twin, but constellation completely shows that energy present. Now, this twin has gone missing from everyone's conscious awareness. However, unconsciously, my client knows the presence somewhere in her body, in her mind, in her consciousness. And the entanglement that I'm talking about here is almost like survivor's guilt. Like, I made it, I am alive, and my sister or brother who was there with me did not make it. So how do I prove my loyalty towards this missing sibling? Is kind of creating unconsciously situations in my life where I feel completely blocked. So I am kind of unconsciously creating situations where I don't have money, I don't have partner, I don't have house, out of solidarity, out of that pure love and loyalty towards the missing person, the missing sibling. So in this case, for example, the rule number 1, the need to belong, is broken unknowingly, not knowingly, but completely unknowingly, yet it has an impact on the rest of the members of the family. Example of hierarchy law being broken. I had a client he came with this block towards attracting the right woman in his life. And when we did the constellation, what came up as he's a child in his family, his father passed away very, very early. And mother, of course, single mother brought him up. Now in his, again, unconscious state, he's entangled with the missing father. That space is vacant for him. And when he's entangled with that missing father, he's kind of gone up the hierarchy. He's supposed to be the child, father is supposed to be higher up in the hierarchy, but in his, somehow that's now reversed. This is what we call as parentification, when we become bigger than our parents and we take that position so as to, you know, help the family in any ways. So when we do that, we actually lose track of our lives. So he's taken that position of the father, and constellation shows partner is very much there present, but his focus is on that entanglement, on that missing father. As a child, there is then an entanglement. I could give many more examples. These are some that come to my mind. Again, very young individual, like in her teens, very sad, like, you know, withdrawn. Entanglement with, again, miscarried child, aborted child, like a sibling of them. So as I go forward, I will keep giving examples. If there are any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. It could also, you know, talk of, sometimes not only about missed children in the family, but also in case of adoption. So when a child of the family is given up for adoption, or a child of a different family is brought into a family, because then for that child, there are biological parents and there is an ancestral line, and then there is the adoptive parents and there's this new family. So these are few examples where the entanglements happen. But as I said, I'm happy to give you more examples. How do we, what kind of entanglements are these? As I said, it could be relationship issues, which is very common. It could be physical illnesses. I have worked with, for example, IBS, very common, and probably for me, in my experience. You could also look at, you know, blocks of earning, saving money, blocks to career success. These are all your issues that family constellations. In fact, this is one modality that kind of works on anything and everything. It is considered to be a very deep healing modality, where we say not at the level of the mind alone, but at a very deep level of the soul. And it definitely reveals the hidden dynamics in the families, in the systems that we belong to. Now, most of you will be wondering, then how does this work? And that's where the magic lies, that's where the mystery lies, and that's where it becomes very difficult sometimes to explain unless you have experienced it. So I will try my best. There are two ways to do family constellations. You could either participate as in a workshop where you are with a group of people you could work with, or if that is not an option for you, you could also do it one-on-one. Now, one-on-one constellations can happen online and they can also happen face-to-face. I'm first going to explain how it works as a group, and then I will explain the one-on-ones. So as a group, imagine you will be ideally in for a one full day workshop with, say, approximately 8 or 10 people and the facilitator. Each person will, of course, have an area to work with. Say, for example, if it's a relationship issue, if it's anger management issue, if it is about quitting an addiction, etc., etc. So the beauty is, we believe that information is available to us at any given point of time. So in a room, when we sit in a circle, we have a field, we have the floor in front of us, and that floor can transform into a matrix that carries all information about us, our systems, our families, our ancestors, everyone. So say one client would come, and it's up to client whether client wants to talk in front of the group about the issue. Mostly people do that. If not, your facilitator could go outside and talk to you in private as well. And you can say that this is the issue I want to work with. Say, for example, client comes and says, I want to work with my block towards money. I just can't earn money. When you come back, facilitator will then ask you to choose 2 or 3 people to begin with from the group, from the remaining 9 people who you're not connected to, who do not know you, who have no idea about your background. And facilitator will probably give you elements to work with and say, okay, choose anybody from this group who will play you. choose a person who will play your money, and let's choose a person who will play the role of the block of this money. So there is you and your money and there's block. So as a client, you would go and you would intuitively choose anyone, and anyone can play that role. It doesn't need anybody to be anything special. You could just choose 1, 2, 3 people, and then you're going to place them in the floor on the field, as you see in the picture here as well. And from there on, you are just a passive observer. You do not take part in your own constellation at that moment. You will go and take a seat from where you can watch these 3 people. So there will be an initial placement that will be done by you, which in turn shows the inner image. From there on, you will just sit and observe. Now, these people will now start to channel that information. Many a times it is so wonderful to watch that, say for example, one person is playing someone's father and that father has knee pain. It is often observed that the person who's playing the father of the client also experiences same kind of physical symptoms. Now, with the facilitator now, movement will also start to happen. There will be a flow of energy between, say, the money, the client, and the block. Sometimes it is required for us as facilitators to add certain statements to bring whatever is hidden out in the open. And the elements of this constellation of the people on the field will ultimately show the resolution. Now, the beauty of this is the conscious mind of the client does not participate. Hence, it is completely done with strangers that you do not know, who have no information about you, yet you will be absolutely amazed and surprised that they're able to bring out the exact nature of the people that they are playing. We sometimes start with elements like money and block, and many a times we see they kind of get transformed into certain specific people in your lives. Sometimes we also do it completely blind. So the facilitator may just ask you to pick up a few elements. Of course, later you will understand who they are and what they are playing. But even without naming or labeling them, constellation will show the complete picture. So the premise of it is, when we are, as I said, remember, we are without fear, we are without intention, and we leave our perceptions behind. When we step into the matrix with the permission of the client, we are able to pick up information that is available, but with our conscious minds, we may not be able to pick up, or which we know about, but we are not able to kind of imbibe it or accept it in our lives. When we come to the final resolution picture, then there's an option for the client to then come and integrate this final resolution into their heart. What I mean by that is they see the resolution and they can step in back in place of the person who was playing the client and take this new picture in. And we leave it at that. Energies shift, changes happen, and entanglements, in that sense of the word, they start to disentangle, because it will show, the constellation shows where the blockages are, and it will show how it opens up. The same thing can be done one-on-one. The only difference is, in a one-on-one session, we don't have the luxury, and it is truly luxury, because when others are channeling for you, it is absolutely fascinating to watch what happens in the field. But for any reason, if we are not able to do that, you could also do it one-on-one. Instead of people, then it is either me as your facilitator, or it's you who's going to channel. We could use small figurines, as you see in the picture. We could use bottles, we could use crystals, stones, paper, almost anything, pillows, chairs, to do the same movement to bring it to resolution. So this is how we do it. How do you know if this is a modality that will work for you? The simple answer to that is, if you're facing any of these entanglements, any of these blocks that you are facing, then definitely this is a modality that works on all of them. And also, if you have been working on yourself through other modalities and Sometimes, you know, we progress, and after some time we stagnate, and then we progress, and then we stagnate. If at any point you feel stuck, that the same pattern is still there, though you have worked a lot on yourself, which means your own issues you have tried to solve as much as you can, but there's something probably bigger that is influencing this, then it is definitely worth doing family constellations, because it will reveal the source of this bigger power, that from where you have the, if you have any of the entanglements there. What is important for it to work? 3 things. First and foremost, there needs to be urgency. You know, this is not a modality of curiosity, okay, let me see what happens, or it's not a modality to, in fact, after the constellation workshops or sessions, I always tell my clients, be with yourself, keep it in. It's not a place to dissect, to talk about it, to gossip about it. This is not the space. This is a space where you have a burning desire to solve something in your life. So the urgency needs to be really, really strong. There needs to be a need for change from within you, that accepting this is no longer working for me. I need to shift something in my life. And the third thing is the openness. Openness in the sense, constellation will always reveal the resolution. It is up to us then how much of it we can take in. Sometimes clients will very openly take it in. Sometimes it's a little difficult, and you may always say to yourself that I see what is there, and I'm working on my readiness, and it may take me a little more time. Even that is fine. Sometimes we see there is no resolution, in the sense, not in the way we think that resolution is. But even if constellation is abrupt, constellation is not what I thought it was, it still works. I've recently had an experience with a client who was working on a job. She was not able to get a job for many years, for almost 2-3 years. And we did her constellation, and what came up in the constellation was not what she believed or what she was at that moment ready to, you know, face. So it was a very abrupt ending to it. But to her absolute amazement, within 4 days of that constellation, she actually landed up in a job after 3-4 years of trying for a job. Why I'm saying this is because sometimes constellation shifts energies immediately, sometimes almost overnight. And sometimes it takes time. It takes layers, and we work on those different layers. So I also have, like this client of mine, 4 days. And I also have clients with whom I've worked years back, maybe 2.5 years back, and they would come back now and say, you know, now I know what the constellation meant, and now I see the shift that has happened in my life, say from the last 6 months or for the last 1 year. So it is again case to case, but it is an extremely very amazing and powerful modality. If you're ready for change, this is something that you may want to try to experience. There are family constellation facilitators all around the world. So for any of you who are watching me on Facebook are in a different country, you could either do it online, or it is something I personally say each one of us should at least experience at least once in our lives. It is truly life-changing. So that is what I had in mind to share with you. We do have a workshop coming up at the end of this month, should any of you be interested. And that's about what I had in mind. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and okay. Oh, there are so many messages. I'm so sorry because my chat box was not giving me any indication. I will now go through it. Okay, our system is connected to the energy, even if we are not of that community or person. Aline, what do you mean by this? Our system is connected to the energy, even if we are not of that community.
Yeah. What I mean is, even if we are not in within that community or the family, or not the family, community or the country,
Yes.
will we be in the same system still?
Yes. So What happens is, say, for example, a child is born in an Indian family. Okay, so parents are Indian, which means child automatically has a line, ancestral line coming from India. Now, say the child is now, when the child was born in the USA. So child's nationality now becomes US citizen. Yet. So this is an area where, you know, the belonging becomes a little confusing inside the child. So according to family constellations, we belong and we will still belong there. So to answer your question straight away, yes, even if our nationalities have changed, even if religion has changed, even if a country of residence has changed, but we could still, if the other part of the family, if the other part of our ancestors, if there is some kind of exclusion there, then entanglements are still possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen to everyone, but no, you do. Say, for example, another way of looking at it is we have two kind of families, right? One is the family of origin. So family of origin is where I was born, my parents, my ancestors. Then when I get married, I have my children. This is my current family. I belong there equally. So I belong as a child to my ancestors' line, and I also belong into this new family that I have created. So my belonging can be in both the spaces. The idea to be entanglement free or block free is to avoid judgments or exclusions towards any of these communities, any of these systems that we belong to. Does that answer your question about country?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Can you give another example of need for order? Order is hierarchy. So how do we end up breaking the law of order or hierarchy is when we consciously or unconsciously take the position which is higher than us. So a classic example of breaking of order will be, say we have a family, there is a husband, wife, and their first child, say, is an abortion or a miscarriage. After that miscarriage, then the couple go ahead and they have two more children. Now, from the conscious perspective, this family has father, mother, and two children. So say there's a boy and then there's a girl. So the boy will be kind of labeled or known as the first child of this family, because nobody, you know, we don't kind of say, oh, there is someone else. But the fact remains that this child is actually number 2. And say the child after that, the girl is the number 3. Breaking of order will mean telling this child or assuming this child to take the position of number 1. He's number 2. And when this happens, many a times something will be off, some kind of block, some kind of entanglement, some kind of pattern. It could be physical disease, it could be anger. I cannot label. Each case is very, very different. But that is a classic case when the hierarchy is broken. The number 2 is placed on number 1, and the number 3 is taking number's 2 position. The way to disentangle is keeping number 1 slot empty, because that person is not with us. That child did not make it, but doesn't mean that the child wasn't there. So the child is there in my heart. The second one is the so-called firstborn of the family, and then there is the third one. So that's an example of how hierarchy is broken. Or it could be, another example, as I said, could be parentification, when I assume the role of my mother because of whatever reason. My mother is not, say, physically capable, maybe she was sick, or my father died and I took up that position, and so I kind of move above them. That's another example of the need of order. Then there's another question, for how long it should be the blocking? Could you explain that as well?
Yeah, for example, the blocking, for how long shall we experience to call it a blocking?
Well, see, it depends. The block could be there, the entanglement could be there from birth to the end. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes we get to know of it earlier, and sometimes we just don't know about it. But if there's an entanglement, as the children of the family. When I say children of the family, I'm just not referring to young kids. It includes even us as adults. We are also children of some families. So it could be lifelong, or it could be after an incident. So for example, if the miscarried child in the family is not acknowledged, it could also be affecting the parents, say from that event. If there's an entanglement with grandmother, for example, that could be affecting me from the time that I have been born. So there is no time frame. It is just consciously, when we are aware of it, then we start to dig, and then we say, oh, there's a problem, there's a pattern in my life that I need to kind of change. So no structured way of saying how long, but it could be from birth, or it could start from the time one of the rules got broken. So it could start when somebody changes their passport or their nationality. That could also be another start of an entanglement, or it could exist like from forever.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome, welcome, Ali. I'm just going to have a look and check. No, I don't have. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box, or we are at the end almost, so you could definitely unmute yourself as well. Okay, I don't think there are any other questions. If there are, I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, in that case, thank you so much for joining me today for this webinar. If you have any questions later, you can always contact me or Illuminations. We'll be happy to answer all your queries on this modality. And in case you are leaving the meeting now, have a lovely evening and take care of yourselves. I will be available for the next few minutes in case you have any questions.
I have another question, please.
Yes, please.
When we're saying the system, what do you mean in another? I mean, it's only the family and the country and the communities we belong, or is it the friends, the neighbors? What do you mean exactly?
See, what is closest to us is obviously our families, and hence, the name is called family constellation. So that's one of the most prominent systems that we have. I would say it is any of this. Even when you are with friends, that's a system, right? That's a system which also should follow ideally all of it. Like when you are in a group of friends, you contribute to each other, and you should be growing in that community of your friends. Of course, there's need of hierarchy. There are people who you know from before, and there are people who you know later in life. And irrespective of the subjective experience, when you belong to a system, you belong. Any exclusions will show up in some form of entanglement or the other. But most commonly you would see is with families, because they are very close, we are very close to them. So there will be families, it could be communities, as I said, countries, all of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Welcome, Malin. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for all the messages on the chat box. Barbara says, thank you, you're amazing. You make sense of the strange things. Yes, thank you so much. It is not strange. It is experiential. So yes, you must, Barbara, now that you must sometime come and experience the stranger things. Thank you so much. You're more than welcome. Join me anytime. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we'll call it a day and I'll take your leave. Take care and have a good evening. Bye.